The champagne burned in my eyes more than the cut on my cheek. I remember the sound of crystal shattering, someone gasping, and then laughter. Not everyone laughed, just the ones who mattered. My mother, my father, and worst of all, my little brother Nathan, still in his tux, smiling as if he'd just won. I got up slowly from the wreckage of the champagne table, shards of glass crunching under my palms. My suit was soaked. A stream of pink bubbly dripped down my sleeve. And right there, at my feet, half buried in glittering debris, was my cufflink. Just one. My grandmother's gift to me the day I made partner, sterling silver, engraved with her initials. It was snapped clean in two. The room had gone quiet, save for the band awkwardly fading out. 250 guests, all dressed to the nines at the Ritz-Carlton ballroom, watched me like I was the entertainment. This wasn't just a wedding. It was their wedding. Nathan and Eric, New York's new golden couple. And I, apparently, was the clown. What triggered it? That's the question I kept turning over as I walked out into the night air, still dripping, heart racing. But I knew. Of course I knew. They wanted my house. The Central Park mansion I bought on my own, with zero help from the family who never missed a chance to say I was the boring one. Nathan had asked me to sign over the deed as a symbolic gesture, a wedding gift. When I said no, they said I was selfish. That family sacrifices for each other. That I had more than enough. Then my mother asked if Grandma would have wanted her house to stay in the family. And when I still refused, Nathan stood up, red in the face, and shoved me a heart. I fell backward into the champagne table like a cartoon character. And no one stopped him. Even now, as I sit here, dried blood on my collar and glass in my palm, I can't shake the way their faces looked, like they enjoyed it. Like they'd been waiting for me to fall. I've always been the stable one. The one who paid for college tuition when Nathan flunked out of his first two programs. The one who kept Dad's business from collapsing when he got caught up in that embezzlement scandal. I even paid for half this godforsaken wedding. Quietly. Willingly. Because that's what I've always done. But not anymore. I'm not angry. I'm done. There's a difference. Anger fades. This won't. This is something colder. Sharper. Like the cufflink I slipped into my pocket, jagged and broken. They took my dignity in front of a ballroom full of people. So I'm going to take everything else. Not with fists. With strategy. With law. With precision. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours replaying the wedding over and over in my head. The faces, the laughter, the look of satisfaction on Nathan's face. I could still feel the sting of champagne on my skin and the jagged edge of the broken cufflink pressed into my palm. But what kept me awake wasn't the public humiliation. It was the avalanche of memories it set off, each one heavier than the last. By sunrise, the phone started buzzing. Text from family, half apologies, half justifications. Nathan's message was the worst. You overreacted. We're family. Don't ruin this. I didn't respond. Instead, I picked up the phone and called the only person who ever told me the truth, even when it hurt. Riley answered on the second ring, her voice thick with sleep. What happened? I told her everything. The wedding. The demand. The shove. The laughter. My voice shook when I described the cufflink, how it snapped as if it had been waiting for that moment all along. She was quiet for a long time. You know this isn't just about the house, right? Of course I knew. I'd always been the family's safety net. Every time someone gambled and lost, they came to me. Nathan with his mounting credit card debt. Dad with the tax liens. Mom, needing a little help to keep up appearances at her charity events. Every time, I opened my wallet and closed my mouth. But the wedding changed something in me. For the first time, I felt nothing for them. No anger. No guilt. No need to explain or make peace. Just clarity. I'm done, Riley, I said. I'm going to burn it all down, legally, professionally. No more gray zones. She exhaled, a slow, thoughtful sound. Good. Make sure they never forget it. I hung up and stared at my phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt a strange calm, a sense of purpose that had always eluded me in this family. I started to make a list. Every loan, every bailout, every sacrifice, every time I had been manipulated with guilt or duty or outright emotional blackmail. I remembered the night Dad showed up drunk at my office, begging me to sign over a business loan. The time Nathan took credit for a case I'd won, and Mom went along with the story because it made him look better. The countless birthdays and holidays where I played the role of the responsible son, quietly swallowing resentment while they made jokes at my expense. It was all there, right beneath the surface. The wedding was just the spark. Now, I was ready to start the fire. I opened a new file on my computer and began outlining everything: dates, amounts, incidents. I had the receipts. I always did. For the first time, I saw the pattern clearly. I wasn't just the family's scapegoat. I was their foundation. But not anymore. By the time the sun crested the skyline, I had a plan. No more pleading. No more compromise. This time, I'd use the tools they never understood: the law, the truth, and my absolute willingness to walk away forever. I didn't feel alone. I felt free. The first thing I did was call in a favor. I wasn't interested in public sympathy, but I knew how quickly gossip could turn into a weapon when wielded by the right hands. I emailed Lila Chin, a reporter I'd helped out years ago on a legal matter that could have cost her career. Subject line: family drama. No names yet. Within hours, she called back, her voice practically humming with anticipation. I didn't give her everything. Just enough. "You'll want to watch the society pages for a scandal after the Morrison wedding at the Ritz," I said, laying out the essentials: the demand for my house, the public humiliation, the shattered heirloom. All off the record for now. She promised to handle it delicately, but I knew her version of delicate was still dynamite. By evening, whispers had begun to swirl among New York's upper crust. "Did you hear what happened at the Morrisons' wedding?" The story spread faster than I expected, fueled by those same guests who'd pretended not to see me fall. I knew the effect would be nuclear by morning. It worked. My mother's first call came at 7:30 a.m., shrill and desperate. "James, what did you do? You're ruining your brother's reputation." My father left voicemails, first angry, then pleading. Nathan texted, "Call me. Don't do this. You're making it worse." For the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No guilt, no pang of obligation. Their outrage meant nothing to me. I didn't even respond. Instead, I spent the day making more calls, assembling a kind of unofficial alliance. First up, Judge Harper, Eric's mother. She'd never liked the way my family treated me, and she understood leverage. Her response was simple: "About time you stood up for yourself. Tell me what you need." Next, I tracked down Uncle Tom, my dad's estranged brother, a man the family had written off years ago after a falling out over money. When I told him what happened, he laughed, a deep, satisfied sound. "Let me know if you need a witness, kid. They've been getting away with this for too long." I felt something loosen inside me, a knot that had been tightening for years. With every call, every conversation, I realized how many people had been waiting for someone to push back against my family's tyranny. For the first time, I wasn't just planning revenge. I was building a case, brick by brick, ally by ally. By the end of the day, I had the beginnings of a strategy. It wasn't about destroying them for the sake of it. It was about truth, consequences, and finally, accountability. If they wanted a war, I was ready to bring one to their doorstep. Amanda Walsh didn't even blink when I laid out my family's demands, their history of emotional blackmail, and the very public humiliation at the wedding. "It's amazing how quickly civility breaks down when money's on the table," she said, sliding a legal pad across her desk. "I'd worked with Amanda before. She was the attorney you called when you needed to make a point so sharp it cut through generations." We got to work. Cease and desist letters, cold, clear, and bulletproof, were drafted for each family member, spelling out the financial boundaries, past debts, and every instance of exploitation I'd endured and documented. I watched Amanda assemble the evidence I'd collected: emails, receipts, text messages, into a weaponized timeline of manipulation and misuse. She explained our opening move: "You're not only protected by law, James. You're owed." It was the first time anyone had said those words to me, and I felt a tightness in my chest begin to loosen. The next day, the letters went out. I expected a firestorm, and I got one. Mom called first, her tone syrupy sweet. "Jimmy, darling, you know how dramatic lawyers can be. Why don't we sit down and talk about this like family?" Her script had always been emotional whiplash, denial, then guilt, then promises to do better. I kept my responses minimal, businesslike. All further communication can go through Amanda. I almost enjoyed the stunned silence that followed. Dad tried the old tough guy act, growling about family loyalty and how I was airing dirty laundry for strangers. I ignored his calls. Nathan sent me paragraphs, threats, apologies, confusion. I read them all, archived them, and never replied. Amanda, meanwhile, was relentless. She subpoenaed records, contacted financial auditors, and initiated steps to reclaim assets I'd loaned or gifted under duress. For every legal notice, my family fired back with guilt trips and gaslighting. They pretended the wedding never happened, or that it was all a big misunderstanding. But I didn't feel a thing. Each attempt to manipulate me landed like a pebble against glass. No cracks, no damage. My resolve was absolute. I showed Amanda their messages, and she built them into our case. "You're not just fighting for money," she said. "You're breaking a cycle." And she was right. With every document we filed, every line we drew, I felt the burden of family duty slip away, replaced by something fiercer and truer: respect for myself. By week's end, the battleground was no longer emotional. It was legal, precise, and on my turf. The invitation arrived on thick, cream stationery, hand-delivered by a courier. Family dinner, an evening of healing. My mother's handwriting curled across the page, artificial and careful. I almost laughed. But Amanda advised me to go. She said confrontation in person could expose their real intentions. So I RSVP'd yes, letting them believe they still had control. The restaurant was a cathedral of glass and marble, dim and expensive. My parents sat at one end of the table, Nathan at the other, Eric's seat conspicuously empty. I nodded at the family pastor in the corner, a last-minute guest whose presence was meant to underscore the seriousness of the occasion. For a moment, I almost felt like the child again, waiting for permission to speak, to be. They started with nostalgia, stories about childhood summers, birthdays, all the ways family comes first. Nathan dabbed his eyes and spoke of brotherhood, painting himself as a victim of a simple misunderstanding. The pastor weighed in with a prayer about forgiveness and the sacred bond of kin. It was a well-rehearsed performance, one I'd watched countless times before. But I didn't flinch. I let them talk, letting the manipulation wash over me like static. Then, when the meal ended and the tone grew urgent, I pulled out a slim briefcase and placed it on the table. Inside were copies of financial records, contracts, emails, every receipt and message I'd collected. I slid a folder toward my father, documentation of the bailout I'd given to keep his business afloat. Another toward my mother, payments for charity events that were really vanity projects. For Nathan, a breakdown of every loan, every tuition check, every gift that was really a rescue. I let the silence stretch as they read. The pastor shifted uncomfortably. I spoke calmly, my voice flat. "You want the house? Fine. Nathan can have it, if he pays me back $1.74 million. Itemized. With receipts." My mother went pale. My father tried to argue, but Amanda's letterhead stared back at him from the folder. Nathan's bravado drained away. He stammered about being blindsided. The pastor, unsure what to say, mumbled something about prayer. For the first time, I saw real fear on their faces, not of losing me, but of being exposed, of facing the truth without a scapegoat. I gathered my papers, left a copy of the repayment contract on the table, and stood up. "This isn't anger. This is accountability. I won't be your safety net anymore. Not financially. Not emotionally. Not ever again." No one followed me as I walked out. No one dared. In the taxi home, I felt lighter than I had in years, not triumphant, just free. Days passed with no response. For the first time in my life, the Morrison family group chat went silent. I watched from a distance as the ripples of my actions began to reach the shore. There were rumors in my father's industry. Old clients started calling in debts, and the word embezzlement began to resurface. The bank quietly withdrew its long-standing line of credit. My mother's charity events lost sponsors. She left messages on my phone, her tone swinging from icy to tearful in a single breath. Nathan, meanwhile, imploded spectacularly. Eric's family, Judge Harper's connections, wanted nothing more to do with him after Lila's discreet article appeared in a Sunday column. Eric moved out within a week, the wedding photos quietly wiped from social media. Nathan's employer, seeing the family drama for what it was, placed him on indefinite leave. The perfect facade shattered. I heard he was staying with a college friend in a studio in Queens, no trace of the newlywed glamour left. There was a time when all of this would have devastated me. I'd spent years believing that my job was to protect them, to sacrifice my own happiness so they could keep up appearances. But when Nathan finally called, voice hollow, barely a whisper, I let it go to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. No one ever apologized. They just wanted the storm to pass. William, my father, made one last attempt. He sent a letter, handwritten, formal, every line dripping with wounded pride, accusing me of tearing the family apart. "You were supposed to be the strong one, James." I filed it away with the rest. I didn't reply. Amanda checked in regularly, keeping me updated as our legal moves played out. Asset transfers were frozen, loans formally called in, and every attempt at emotional manipulation was met with documentation and silence. You know they're going to blame you forever, right? She asked one afternoon. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Let them. The relief I felt wasn't joy or revenge. It was a kind of clean, aching emptiness, the kind that follows when you finally set down a burden you'd carried too long. I started sleeping through the night. I started noticing the city again, the sound of street musicians, the smell of summer rain. I blocked their numbers one by one, deleting voicemails without listening. I left the Morrison group chat. I didn't need closure from them. I had it already. The world didn't end. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. A year later, my home feels nothing like the echoing mausoleum it once was. The silence here is peaceful, no longer heavy with secrets or expectations. I filled the space with music, sometimes live, sometimes just the scratchy warmth of old records that remind me of my grandmother Eleanor's laughter. The Eleanor Project took root faster than I'd hoped. What started as an idea, pro bono legal aid for families exploited by those meant to protect them, became a real force for good. I met clients who reminded me of myself, quiet people bearing impossible loads, convinced they had to accept mistreatment as the price of belonging. For every case I took, I felt something inside me knit itself back together. Last week, I found a letter in my mailbox, addressed in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a check for $500 and a note for the cufflink. I'm sorry you felt hurt. The words were thin, the apology thinner, and the amount almost comically small. I sat with it for a while, waiting for some old reflex, guilt, longing, hope to resurface. None did. Instead, I made a quiet choice. I endorsed the check and sent it to a local music school as a scholarship in my grandmother's name. No one would know except me, and maybe that was enough. I didn't need my family's approval or even their forgiveness. I had something better, a life I'd built on my own terms, one careful boundary at a time. Every so often, I think about reaching out, about answering Nathan's silent messages or replying to my mother's annual Christmas card. But I don't. I keep my distance, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. I no longer owe them anything, not explanations, not loyalty, not pieces of myself. When I walk through Central Park now, I pass the mansion and feel nothing but relief. My grandmother's cufflinks, the unbroken one and its shattered twin, rest on my desk as reminders, not of loss, but of survival and transformation. The story they tell isn't about bitterness or vengeance. It's about ending a cycle, building something lasting from the ruins, and finally understanding that real family isn't blood, it's chosen. And I choose myself.